Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello there, and a beautiful Monday morning to you all. It is the 8th of September in the year 2014, in case you didn't know that either. And we've got, I think, a very interesting hour ahead of us. Pittsburgh has been really, really anxious about who would be our new police chief. A search that seemingly went on forever for this person to come into the beleaguered department that we now have has finally ended with the announcement last week that Cameron McClay is coming here to Pittsburgh from Madison, Wisconsin. All of this coincides, too, with the nation's attention on policing practices in this country and how they have changed. That a result, of course, of Michael Brown's death at the hands of a Ferguson, Missouri police officer. So, a lot of things to talk about with our guest today. David Cooper was the chief of police in Madison, Wisconsin, when Cameron McClay was hired there. So he certainly knows him. And we will talk to him about Cameron McClay, but also we'll talk to him about policing in America today.
Can't hear much on the phone.
I'm hearing. Can't you hear me, David? David?
I can just barely hear you.
Oh, dang it. Hang with us. Hang with us. We'll do what we can. Geez. While we're fiddling, please let us know if I come in any louder or clearer. Not. Oh, geez. David Cooper has a fascinating history himself. He was a former Marine and then a police officer, chief of police of Madison, Wisconsin, and now is an Episcopal priest. So, Reverend Cooper, can you hear me?
Well, it's pretty weak. I'll try.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure if I scream, it doesn't help, does it? No, that's not going to work. So,
Did you want to try to call me back for a better line? Do you think that would work?
We could try it, but I got a feeling we're not going to be any better. But you want to try?
Okay, your assistant came through loud and clear when she called me.
Yeah,
so,
but when we put you on air, we disappear.
Okay, well we can make this work.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, your career path is so unusual. Draw a line from, tell me how one person is a U.S. Marine, a police officer, a chief of police, and then an Episcopalian priest.
How does that happen?
Yeah. How's that happen?
Well, I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess. After 30-some years in policing, I guess you ask yourself the question, the important values that you see as sort of that you believe in, and then they sort of all kind of came together, and it looked like I wanted to go the faith community direction. So I took an early retirement and went off to seminary, and it's been a good life. I've greatly enjoyed it. It's also enabled me to, stay connected with police. When I was at my first parish, I was the chaplain to the police department. It was right next door to my church. So things like that work out.
Well, I know you're still very interested in policing. In fact, have a book out now called Arrested Development. Was there any problem with that title, by the way, given the television show?
Actually, I'm not that involved in television shows, and I really
didn't
realize that until after I selected that title. I thought, well, maybe those TV shows, they come and go, and maybe the book will stick around. But Arrested Development is, I think, just too important to use for police.
Okay, so why did you feel the need to write this book now? Because of what you see happening to policing in America?
Well, yeah, and it really started about 5 years ago, and then when I just 2 years ago when the book was published, we had the big Occupy movement going on. I thought, well, that's really good. That should tie in, because I talk a lot about protest in the book and about the proper way to how police in a democracy ought to handle public protest. So that was an important part of it. But I think the main impetus was really kind of doing self-reflection. The number of years that I've left the field, my feeling was when I retired in the 1990s was that policing was on a ascending journey, that things were getting better. We had community policing. We were getting more diversity in the ranks. We were getting brighter, more educated police officers. That, boy, it's all going to be realized. And then I think 9/11 turned a lot of that back. And I think all of a sudden, looking back, all that I thought would happen didn't. And so I felt, well, I really needed to say something before I left this earth about what police should be, and not only writing to police, but also to citizens. What should you expect from your police?
What should we expect from our police?
Well, you ought to expect from your police department that your police officers be smart, that they be educated, that they would have a college degree, a 4-year college degree, that they would be well-trained, that they would be honest, they would be intimately connected with the communities they serve, and they would be respectful to everyone they came into contact with. That's the model. That's what police in a democracy should be.
And I have to tell you, here in Pittsburgh, there's an awful lot. I mean, I'm listening to that, and I'm thinking, wow, would that be nice? But it doesn't feel here like that's what we have. There seems to be a us versus them kind of feeling. Us being the police feel like they're beleaguered in some way. I think the police in this town are in a defensive crouch. It seems like they look on all of us as sort of the enemy. And I feel for Cameron McClay coming in here, by the way. But how do you change? How do you change a dysfunctional department whose morale is way down and who I think has some bad apples?
Well, it doesn't get much worse than probably what Pittsburgh has experienced.
That's right.
I mean, when your head police leader goes to prison, I mean, it says a lot, and I can imagine how demoralized the men and women of the department are. But it's a large department, and I would venture to say that there are bright, educated men and women on the Pittsburgh Police Department that know what's right and who will step forward and support Chief McClay when he comes in. It's going to take time. It's not something that's, I would say, would at least take 10 years to make significant improvement and change within the organization. It just takes a long, long time.
Well, now when you came in as chief of police in Madison, you came into a overwhelmingly white male department, correct? And
Yep.
you diversified it, but not without a lot. You had a lot of pushback, if I'm recalling, from the rank and file.
Yes, I had a tremendous amount of pushback. I think it took two or 3 years of fighting to hold on to my job. I had the police union sign a petition against me. It was about a little less than half the officers signed. We had major things that we had to do. We had to do something about the combativeness and the violence that was happening between police and students on demonstrations against the war. We had to integrate the police department in terms of both race, of which there was just one black officer on the department, and gender, of which there were no female officers working on patrol. We had some female youth officers, which were interesting. We required them to have a 4-year college degree, but they were not allowed to carry a firearm, nor were they allowed to compete for promotion.
Wow.
So that was the train in which I came as a young chief from the Minneapolis area. I'd been on a suburban department for about 4 years as a chief, and before that about 8 years as a patrol officer and detective in the Minneapolis Police Department. So like Chief McClay, I mean, I had a lot of practical experience. I had a lot of tactical experience, but I also had the significant, I think, impact of working in a racially charged city as a white officer in a all-black neighborhood, and then going to the university during the daytime. I mean, those two contrasts, I think, sort of molded and melded me into a person who knew that police could be much better and could do a great deal of work in the community to preserve civil rights and to represent people who are basically downtrodden in many of our cities. And I think that whole thing came to light once again. Now, this isn't the first time we've had Ferguson. We had lots of Fergusons across our nation's cities in the late 1960s, which precipitated a National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorder called the Kerner Commission.
Yes.
Who said that looking at America, we have two separate societies, one black, one white, separate and unequal.
Right.
And I think we can say the same thing today, and that's 40 years later. But, I'm really hoping that the tragedy of Ferguson is that it will be a springboard to people in America, in their communities, to say, look, we deserve, as citizens of this great nation, to have police who represented us, who preserve our civil rights, who are part of us. We deserve that, because that's what a good democracy looks like.
I was looking at something that was written about, it was a little profile of you, and it said that you centered your department around customer focus and the protection of constitutional rights. And I have to tell you, that just blew me away to think of police looking at us as their customers. And also, when I think of constitutional rights now, I think police are the ones that are often violating them. They're not protecting them.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that in the national polls. The Pew Research came out with one and saw just divergent, separate views of how black Americans, how white Americans
Yes.
see Ferguson, how they see police. There is great disparities in that, and there's a lot of things that need to be fixed. And one way that helped me back in those days is I ran into Dr. W. Edwards Deming and the Quality Movement, and we talk a lot about customer service. That this could also apply to government, not just business, and that police can survey the. I mean, we did surveys of people that we'd arrested, How was your experience? What was it like? Now, it might sound crazy, but I could get an awful lot of information about how my department was operating by these customer surveys.
You are kidding me. You had, and did you change the way? So you actually did surveys of the people you arrested. How was your experience? Did anyone say, "Oh, it was wonderful"? I mean, you wouldn't get any positive feedback, would you?
Well, there's tremendous. The other thing is that, I also run this. I've run a blog for about 3 years now called "Improving Police," and I've got some close to 300 posts online on that. It's on WordPress, and people just Google "Improving Police" and put my name in there, or just "Improving Police." It should pop up. It talks about what that movement was like. How we used quality measurements to improve police. How we changed the leadership of the police department. When I started listening to my officers, getting closer to them, listening to the community, I found out that we've got to do things a lot different, and that is we had to throw out the old coercive, fear-based leadership system and attempt to be more collaborative, working with the men and women that we're privileged to lead, listening to community leaders, putting officers into communities, out of their cars, walking not in pairs, walking alone. Because one thing I found out, you put officers in pairs, you want to know what they do? They talk to each other. When you put officers alone out on foot beats, they talk to the community.
Wow. This all sounds so simple. It sounds like you went back to the future is what you did. Guys just patrolling on the streets, talking to people, being part of the community. Why should that seem so radical now?
Well, it shouldn't be radical. I think anybody that really thought about it, I think if we ask people to be forthright and to be open with us and say, what do you expect from your police? I think we would hear that. We would hear them say, we want men and women who are part of our community, who are fair and who are honest, who treat us with respect even when we're wrong. That we would begin to sort of tease out what a police, how they work in a democracy, and I think it's not rocket science. It really isn't.
Are you aware of a gentleman named David Kennedy?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he was brought in here a few years ago to help Pittsburgh deal with its gang problems. And I remember there was a big, to-do about it, and then nothing came of it. And he later said it was the only time that he's been asked into a community where there was such refusal by the department and by the officers to really implement it that it just crashed and burned. Again, I'm going back to poor Cameron McClay. How do you deal with a department that is so stuck in the past and is so reluctant to make any changes? They're fighting now having to wear regular police hats as opposed to ball caps. The new director of public safety wants them to look like police again. He doesn't want them wearing a bulletproof vests over their uniforms. If they want to wear one under the uniform, fine. They are already up in arms about that.
Well, yep. How can we sit down and reason together? In my book, I talk about 4 obstacles that have arrested the development of our nation's police. The first one is anti-intellectualism. And that's the kind of attitude that you're getting right now, this kind of like, well, what can we learn from academia? If it's not invented here, we don't like it. Being wary of research and data and statistics and those kind of things. If we have, and what we have done for centuries now, recruited police who are not formally educated, this is exactly what we're going to get. We really have to up the standard and look for men and women who have formal educations that are going to think differently about the importance of research and about problem solving, and even where somebody like Professor Kennedy is from Harvard, what can we learn from him? He's done most of his life in strong research and thinking about our criminal justice system. How can we incorporate that into practice? That's so important. And if we don't have men and women who are open to that, every time we talk about that, the door is shut. And then we add the three other obstacles to anti-intellectualism that have arrested the development of police. It's dishonesty, it's corruption. The citizens will not respect police who do not operate honestly, above reproach, high moral and ethical behavior. And the third thing is the quickness to use force. Police must be, in a democracy, restrained in how they use force. And then the final one, and this we come through this through the stop and frisk, through the Ferguson experience, is courtesy, respect, civility. I don't care if you're a homeless person who lives under a bridge. When police encounter you, you have a right as an American citizen to be treated with respect, to have your dignity and your humanity preserved. That's not really super difficult.
It would seem. So I'm wondering, you say restraint in use of force, but we're seeing the exact opposite now, given since 9/11, given this militarization of police departments. I mean, they use a SWAT team to go in when no SWAT team is necessary. They use all these. I mean, when you looked at those Ferguson police, they were unrecognizable as police. What in the name of God is going on?
Well, one of the big my first federal court interaction when I came to Madison was that we were being sued for the fact that the officers took off their badges and their name tags when they were in conflict situations.
Huh.
And so there I was representing the department as the chief, newly appointed in federal court, and saying, well, we will. They wanted officers to have numbers as large as football jerseys, and I said, well, I don't think that would be practical, but I am willing to make a rule and to see that it's enforced. The officers wear their badges at all times and their name tags. And for detectives, for people who are working in plain clothes, that when their name and their badge number is requested by a citizen, they're obliged to give that to them. They're obliged to say who they are. Now that also isn't extremely difficult, but it is very, very important. And just getting back to the David Kennedy matter, I mean, one of the great sort of like hopes I would have that there would be a clinical relationship between a police department, and certainly in Pittsburgh, you can do that. You've got a large police department. You've got a large number of high-quality academic institutions in the Pittsburgh area. A collaboration where you would have practitioners perhaps being in the classroom for a while, and you would have teachers into the field of the police department for a while. You would have ongoing research on the effectiveness of various strategies of the police. I'm not going to go on and on about this, but another, I just want to lay this out as an example about force, and we've seen it, post 9/11. We've seen it with the Ferguson situation. We saw it also throughout this country in how police were responding to the first of the Occupy movements,
Mm-hmm.
highly militarized, armored vehicles, full body armor, shields, face mask, and no identification. Now, one of the situations that I have sort of tried to ask police to be creative about, and that is there some other way than taking a person's life in situations where you have a standoff with a person, not with a firearm, but with, say, a club or a knife?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some other way to end that situation than taking the person's life? Now, I've blogged on this a number of times. I've even gone so far as to suggest some alternative ways in which we could do this without killing the person. But I think that we should expect that police would be able to use a continuum of force, and that every time some mentally ill person in the public square goes berserk, has got a knife in his hand, that the only way we can capture that person is to kill them. I just don't think that's right.
Wow. I wish you were still a police chief. You want a job? We almost have an opening here for you. We had the G20 here where all the leaders of the world came here a few years ago. And I thought I had gone to sleep and woke up in East Berlin, 1965. The town was literally taken over by the police, and they were, as you said before, in like this Darth Vader gear. And it was beyond me. And of course, they dealt with any protesters in a ham-handed manner, resulting in all kinds of civil rights suits later, which I guess were happily paid by the powers that be. And it just strikes me as again so wrong-headed, so crazy, and so injurious to the community's sense of trusting the police.
Yeah, I think it's one thing we developed in Madison. In fact, it's even called around the country now, although not every department uses it. Something called the Madison method, and that is that every response to public protest first involves some dialogue, and preferably, if you know there's going to be a demonstration, some discussion beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
There recently, just last week, was a demonstration going on in front of one of the McDonald's places about increasing the minimum wage, and there was protests throughout the country. But in Madison, by having a dialogue with the demonstrators beforehand, they decided they wanted to have some people arrested. That is, the protesters said,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, this isn't going to be a good protest unless somebody gets arrested. So would you be willing to arrest some of us? And I've had those dialogues before in the past with protesters. Okay, how many people do you want to have arrested? We'll treat them fairly, and they'll be put into jail, and then they can be bailed out. But as part of the protest, they wanted to have some people arrested, and
mm-hmm.
people were treated with dignity and respect, were handcuffed, taken into the jail, or booked, and then later released. So the dialogue beforehand is really important. But so we did that for years. I was there over 20 years. 40 or 50,000 students on the University of Wisconsin campus. A history of a town that does a lot of protest. We never once ever sort of lost a protest. We were prepared. We talked to people. We always approached things very softly. And just a few years ago, the United Kingdom was looking at their soccer matches that were constantly turning to violence, and trying to figure out what happened. So they talked to a professor named Clifford Stott. I think he was at the University of Liverpool, and said, take a look at this. Tell us what you see out here. So he looked at a number of interactions of the football crowd and came to the conclusion that in his words, the softly approach worked, and not the hard, force-oriented, mounting up with all your equipment. That didn't work very well. And the example was one that I can certainly relate to. You've got an unruly crowd. Say you've got out there at the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium. You got a couple of drunks that are throwing beer around and acting incivilly. Okay, so if we're in that crowd, oh my gosh, those people want to calm down. If you send a squad of police with helmets and full body armor and batons in, the crowd senses that, well, that's unfair. That's unfair, and then they start throwing stuff at the police. Whereas, if you send two officers in to ask people to calm down, quit their behavior, give them some warnings, you've got, if the things go south, go bad, the arrests have to be made, the people that are around that incident support the police, because the police seem to operate fairly. They gave people warning. They talked to them, and these jerks ought to be arrested.
I'm wondering how much fear plays a role in how police are responding now, which leads me to believe that maybe the wrong people are in police uniforms. It seems like it takes some courage to do the kind of policing you're talking about. And it seems like it would take less courage to get all, geared up and go in like, the big bad police, which seems to be the MO for the police in this country a lot. Are the police, are we getting the right people in the force?
Well, we don't know if we're getting the right people, but what we can see is that certainly when we try to select the best people, which is the first step in improving a police department, start getting the best people you can recruit in there, is to make sure that they have the proper training, and that the training is long enough and effective enough, because fear is a big part of this job. I mean, you're going into situations where there are shots fired, where people are going crazy. You have to be able to monitor your own and control your own fear. And one of the ways that is done through effective training, I have always been a big proponent of martial arts training for police, because I think it puts police in situations where you have fear present, and you must use the appropriate amount of force that's sufficient for the situation you're encountering there. But what you find is that most police are not trained in hand-to-hand methods very well. What they're trained is use of the taser and the firearm, and that's where the training is focused at, and not so much as to see how officers are able to control their breathing, controlling their response, controlling their anger, and get the job done. It's very difficult, but people can be trained to do this effectively, but it takes a lot of commitment to the training, and then it takes a tremendous amount of positive, reinforcing leadership by the men and women who are in leadership positions in the department. I mean, leadership counts. I mean, we have seen this year after year, is that we think leaders don't matter, but the fact is that leaders matter more than we think, because people are watching them all the time. We're getting our cues about what's right and what's wrong from our leaders, and especially in police.
I was looking at an interview you did, and you said this. It seems like the only strategy now is the use of force. We really have come to believe that technology will save us. And then you talk about what it used to be. You said we didn't have aerosol pepper spray. We didn't have any good equipment. The only thing we had were helmets and face shields. So you could still get hurt out there. It was still in one's self-interest to say, let's talk about this. Let's negotiate before we get into some big brouhaha. But now it's pretty easy to go in there and mix it up with the crowd because the police have this body armor. They've got tasers, and it changes the way. I'm wondering if we should just strip the police of all of these gizmos they've got, which have helped fuel their the violence the police now seem to be perpetrating.
Well, yeah, absolutely. When we always use officers, sometimes in blazers, but certainly in regular uniforms, without hats, to walk into crowds, talk to people, and everything. But what many people didn't know is that around the corner in the basement of one of our buildings, I had 20 or 30 police officers in helmets and face masks and long batons as backup. And it was important for my officers to know that. Look, I'm going to ask you to go into the crowd and talk and negotiate these people, find out what's going on, and let's try to keep the lid on this thing. But I want you to know, if things go south, if things get dangerous here, we've got men and women ready to come to your aid. That's really important. But I think that the difference in handling crowds now than say during the Civil Rights Movement is that during the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s and 70s and even up to the 80s, the anti-war work, is that we police were still vulnerable. I mean, to stand out there in line, even with a helmet and a shield on, you didn't have body armor. You had a face shield, but you didn't have an actual body shield. You didn't have a lot of this equipment, and maybe it was more important to sort of keep a lid on things.
Right.
Now in sort of every encounter, the police are going to win because they've got the armament, they've got the firepower, they've got the full body armor. It isn't a matter of in a protest who's going to win, and that goes across the world today. The government can always win, and is that a situation where we want that we go along with things because we're being coerced or because it's the right thing.
When you
protest is an important part of American life. I mean, like it or not, we are a nation of protesters.
Right.
Being able to do that without being herded up by police and put into detention areas as some large police departments did to protesters and tourists, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
There was just a recent significant multi-million-dollar settlement in
New York
City involving tourists who were walking on the street during a demonstration and who were corralled by police and held in detention for a number of hours. I mean, that shouldn't happen in America.
No, but it's happening more and more. When you were the chief, didn't you used to take time away and spend time out on the street a lot?
Well, I used to do that. I thought it was important that I would, be in uniform and check out a patrol car and answer calls and work around the city. I think it's important for leaders to do that regardless of the size of the organization because you have to know how your systems are working. Do you go down and take a look at the booking at 10 p.m. on a Saturday night? How are things going in the jail? How about in the emergency room? How about at the detox center? How is everybody getting along? What do people say when you go down to talk to the supervising physician at the ER about how are relations with my police officers? How are things going in detox? how does this system work at night? What are the attitudes of the people out there? I'll have to admit that none of the officers wanted to work traffic with me because it took me absolutely forever to fill out a traffic ticket.
But so you still, even when you were the chief, you were still doing that, making yourself go out and do the job of the officers under you. Did you make your other leadership, like your captains and commanders, do that as well?
Well, that was one of the requirements. I got a lot of pushback on it, and I used to go out for a month every summer and work the night shift and just shift things around. And I'm going to be gone for a month. The assistant chief's going to have to take over, and things are going to have to wait. And I remember a lot of pushback from my commanders that said, I know what it's like to work at night. Have to put up with all that. How to be out there? It's 10 below zero, and there's a traffic accident. I already know what that's like, Chief. And my response always was, I know you know what it's like, but the men and women who you lead don't know you know that.
Huh. Wow. Well, I can see why. Yeah, you're a born leader. That's obvious. Hey, can you deal with the overuse of these SWAT teams? I'm hoping you'll agree with me that there is overuse.
Well, it seems to be. I think that's what most people believe. I think the nation is coming to that understanding. I think Ferguson certainly picked that scab off there and said, "Look at, oh my gosh, is this overreaction here?" And we've also seen it in the Great War against drugs. And granted that there are nasty drug dealers out there who got weapons and everything, and are really bad characters. But I think the use of paramilitary operations by local police have to be very, very carefully used. You can't have the SWAT team on every physical arrest or every no-knock raid. I think that what we tend to sow when we do that is sort of the seeds of it's us versus them. It's the police that seem to be more like the military today, and then there's the rest of us in the world here.
Right.
And I don't think that's the kind of attitude and expectation we want in a free society.
Well, I absolutely agree. That is increasingly, though, what we do have. Police obviously are. Communities say to police, we give you the right to use force. We don't do this for anybody else. We give you that right, really a privilege to use it, and you have to use it responsibly. And I think somehow that's gotten lost.
Yeah, I think that is true. I mean, police, I think sociologist Egon Bittner said this years ago, the unique role of police is the non-negotiable use of force in the society.
Right.
Few people have got authority to put their hands on you, to restrain you, and to put you into a jail.
Right.
Few people have that, and that responsibility of the use of force must be carefully used. In fact, it is a sacred privilege, and police see themselves as we are holders of a very sacred privilege here, is that we have the authority, if necessary, to use force in getting our job done. And as Sir Robert Peel found 150-some years ago in organizing the British police, is that the public trust of the police is inversely proportionate to the amount of force that's used by the police in carrying out their duties. So the more force, the less public support.
Okay, so the more police use force, the more they delegitimize their authority.
That's right, and then they lose their effectiveness within the community. And I think that's the thing that I think maybe police have really not considered is it is the respect and the support that the community has for you that enables you to be effective in what you do. Because in a community that does not respect their police, will not support them, and the police simply can't get the job done. No one will come forward and say, I'll be a witness, or let me give you some information, or even when you're in physical danger. The interesting thing we found out in a study back in Michigan State about foot patrol, when we were first looking at foot patrol and trying to develop an empirical reason about why officers should be on foot. We found out that officers walking alone on foot in a community in which they worked in were in fact safer than the two officers running the patrol car in the same neighborhood.
Wow. That's amazing.
I mean, that was a stunning thing to find out. And the reason is that we have had that happen so many times in our, when we did our neighborhood officers, one officer in one neighborhood, the push was for two, and I said, no, we're just going to have one officer. And time again, when an officer would be in a tight situation, it would be citizens who were calling 911, and not only citizens who were calling 911, but citizens that would intervene and help the officer make an arrest in that neighborhood.
Wow. Wow.
And those are powerful examples of really how good, how effective, how supportive of our nation's values good policing can be.
Well, so Cameron McClay learned most of his experience as a police officer and captain were with the Madison Police Department, which you pretty much created as it exists now. What is your sense of him, if your memory serves?
Oh, yes. Well, I've certainly had a lot of contact with him. Even after I retired, I think Cam saw himself as a sort of a keeper of those values that he had learned as a young police officer, and as I think he was a sergeant when I left, but he was in the formative movement in the 80s and the 90s of developing, the professional style of policing that's in Madison today. The values, the way in which protest is handled, the way in which men and women are led within the organization, and the way in which the organization connects with the community. I mean, he was imprinted with that during those formative years, and I think it has made a great difference. And he has gone on since my retirement, into being a captain of, I believe, the North District,
right,
predominantly minority area. He knows how to lead. He knows how to listen, and this I believe personally is a unique opportunity for Pittsburgh to see what the state of policing can be, how great it can be. I had another one of my captains go to Boise, Idaho, Mike Masterson. He has been there for 10 years in a community that's Western and Mormon, and who has developed these same principles in the Boise department, into how they're going to handle protest, how they're going to handle mentally ill veterans when they come back and in many cases act up in the community, and the leadership style that he has chosen to use, what we call a quality leadership, how he has continued to build on these principles. And I would say the same thing with Cam McClay in his career.
What advice would you give Cam McClay coming into this this miserable situation with the Pittsburgh Police Department right now?
I think I've already said something like that to him. I did give him a call, and I think the most important is for him to be himself. I mean, he's the real deal. Okay, so he is a quality person. He holds important values about this society and about protecting the Constitution and the dignity and worth of all people. He has that, and he has, and to Pittsburgh, I would say, and to the mayor, Cam needs to have the time, and he needs to have the backing to make this happen for Pittsburgh. Because if it does, Pittsburgh can be a shining star amongst the police departments in our country. You have that opportunity right now.
But as you say, I mean, you were under attack in Madison, but and the police union was after you. I'm sure that's going to happen to him here. How important is it then for the mayor to have his back and for the city to have his back?
Well, it's absolutely essential, and I would say not only to the mayor and members of the city council, but the civic leaders. Civic leaders in both the business and industrial areas, and the educational areas, but also in the areas of the community leaders. They have got to stand up, and they've got to be able to back him up in the needed transformation that must happen. It is, I believe, as important in anything that perhaps recently that's happened in Pittsburgh. You've gone through, a big change, went from the steel mills to what Pittsburgh is today, and I'm sure that there's that thought of a continued improvement in this city, and the police can help that happen a lot easier when you've got officers who are on the street, who understand how this society works, the importance of being a constitutional officer, the importance in many cases of being social workers in blue. They make a big difference. Police know what's going on in the streets. They can make a big difference.
Well, it has been such a breath of fresh air talking to you and hearing your philosophy of policing, and I certainly hope that Cam McClay is able to do here what you did in Madison.
Well, one thing that when I first came to Madison, certainly the police department was not all on my side. It probably took 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
For them to finally say, "Oh, okay, how do we work together?" But one thing that I had on my side was I had people at the University of Wisconsin, I had people in law school and sociology, I had business leaders, I had the civic groups. I worked closely with minority organizations and community groups. They felt that it was important that I stay as chief, and I think that made a big difference.
Well,
and I think the same thing has got to happen in Pittsburgh. Is if you're concerned about your police, if you want to see your police improve, you've got to back this chief. You've got to stand up for him. You've got to help him. He'll do the right thing, but you really have to help him.
Thank you. I can't thank you enough for spending this time with us. Thank you so much. And
thanks so much, Lynn. It was really, I really enjoyed this conversation. It's a conversation now that we've got to have, in neighborhoods in America.
Indeed. And again, if you want to read more about David Cooper, you said you have your a website and a blog, and you have your book, Arrested Development, out. How do people get to your blog?
Well, they can get on my blog and just follow it. If you get on improvingpolice.wordpress.com,
okay,
get on there, and on the right-hand side it says follow this blog, and every time I have a new post, close to 300 right now, you'll get an email, and you can check it out. I think it's going to help you with your dialogue about police and how police in your neighborhoods can be improved.
So
It'll give you some information, some support for the things that you already believe in your heart.
So 1 minute you're writing a sermon, and the next minute you're writing a blog on how to arrest somebody, how not to kill them.
Well, they are good. Well, I suppose they might be kind of little mini sermons. But I don't know. I think they're very practical.
Okay, thank you.
But then a good sermon should also be practical. Right?
Yes, indeed. Right, exactly.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for everything.
Thanks, nice talking
Thank
with
you. Great talking to you. Bye.
God
Bye.
bless you, Pittsburgh.
Thank you. God bless you. Bye. That, ladies and gentlemen, is David Cooper, C-O-U-P-E-R. C-O-U-P-E-R. He is the police chief who absolutely remade the Madison Police Department and who hired Cameron McClay and who mentored Cameron McClay. And all this wonderful stuff you have just heard from him is what McClay's idea of policing is. It is, of course, antithetical, from what I can tell, of how the way the Pittsburgh Police Department now operates. So I will take to heart what David Cooper said about if Cameron McClay is to succeed here, he needs to know the community is behind him because he is going to be wrestling to get that department under control. A wrestling match that, according to David Cooper, could take well over a decade. So let's get behind him because I mean, I hope you were able to listen. I also want to apologize for the quality of sound. I hope it didn't chase you away, and I hope I will get it under control very soon because this is unacceptable in terms of quality at the moment. Quite clearly, I'm aware of that, and I'm embarrassed by it. So, again, David Cooper, C-O-U-P-E-R, the chief of police who hired our chief of police and taught him the method of policing that you've heard him delineate. It's hard not, and that this guy, you can see, this guy's a born leader, and you can see that when you see policing as the protection of the constitutional rights of the community, that's a whole different mindset we've got to call, a whole different mindset. Caller, go ahead.
Hey, Lynn, this is Roger.
Hi.
I thought your show today was wonderful.
Yeah.
David Cooper really, brings back memories of what I thought religious leaders and police leaders should be. Right. He's educated. He thinks. He's not testosterone-driven, gung-ho, and he uses his brain.
Right.
And we've gotten away from that so much.
That's right. Wouldn't you? I mean, and I'm sure that Cameron McClay is much like him. I mean, that's what we're getting. Listening to David Cooper should give us all a better sense of what we're getting in Cameron McClay. But you can see why I'm so nervous because you can imagine what the testosterone-infused good old boy cops in this city are going to, if they were listening to that interview, how they would be reacting.
Oh, we know how they're going to react. This is where I like Peduto. I don't think he's of that kind. I think he's more sentient. I don't know. He seems different to me than Murphy and Luke.
Yeah.
And I hope he really gets support, and the new police chief needs our support.
God, yes. So thank you so much. I'm glad you were able to listen, even though the sound was so awful. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I heard very well. I didn't have any problems today.
Really?
So I got the whole show.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye. You think that might have just been here? I couldn't hear him.
I couldn't really. I was trying to fiddle.
I know you were. Jess was fiddling through the whole thing with audio levels and stuff. And so let me know. You mean you guys heard that okay? Because if that's an internal problem here, obviously we need somebody to fix our sound audio system. Yeah, I mean, he gives you, you just see, my God, a whole world opens up when you listen to somebody like David Cooper. A whole world of possibilities. And hope. And hope. The Madison way has made, by the way, the Madison Police Department, which David Cooper, who you just heard, created, has made it absolutely a template for how you create a great police department. Madison is still considered one of the best police departments in the country because they're not testosterone infused, because they're community based, and because they use your head and not your gun and your taser and your this and your that and your bravado. It has an international reputation. Oh, well, good. Thank you, by the way. And do you believe, did you see the new Pittsburgh Post-Gazette? Did you see that today? One of our callers, one of our listeners wrote in and said, my God, it's like the Weekly Reader. It is. It's that small. The Post-Gazette came out today, the all-new Post-Gazette, and it was like, what? It's tiny. It's not the normal size. It is not this size anymore. It's like it's like really trimmed down. And when you hold it, it feels like there's nothing there. Now, there's a letter on the front that says, it's all the same, but how could it be? There's a lot of square footage that's been lost. I don't know. And I, of course, am incapable of discerning a difference in the print or anything. They made such a big hullabaloo about it. I don't get it. All I know is it's the shrunken Post-Gazette is what's out there now. Wait till you see it if you haven't. Wowee. Okay, gotta go, and tomorrow. See ya. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.